And as Russia bombards Kharkiv and sends 300 tanks toward Kyiv, the people of Ukraine are scared, but they are standing defiantly, fighting for their freedom tonight. We spoke with a young woman sheltering at home in Kyiv, learning what it's like to live through a war and knowing that the worst is yet to come.
We waking up uh, with shootings and bombs. It's horrible.
Her entire life, Kristina Bielichenko has lived in fear of Russia, terrified of the day that the threat of Russian aggression would become the reality of war. Now that day is here, and as she splits time between her home and frigid, disease-ridden bomb shelters, she's nearing her breaking point. But as bombs explode and buildings crumble, she can't help but be proud of Ukraine's success so far.
We were always proud of Ukrainians, but we didn't know we brave that much. Honestly, we were like many people super surprised that our military is so strong and so brave to stand up for our country and be so brave to stand up against two countries now. It's Belarus, we as Russia.
She says every day is a roller coaster of emotions, pride in her country, defiance of the Russians, and fear not just for her family, but for her life.
You don't know if you're going to be alive tomorrow. You don't know if your family going to be here. You don't know, because people texting me are you safe? Are your family safe? Honestly, the reply is, we are not safe. No one is safe. And we don't know if we're going to be safe.
As a convoy of tanks heads for her home, Bielichenko knows what awaits her in the days ahead. Constant shelling, bodies in the streets, and the understanding that each day could be her last.
I'm going to be proud of myself to die for the freedom than to be, to live the life like Russians living their life, like rats, like snakes, hiding.
She says that's her message to Vladimir Putin. She and her people are willing to die for Ukraine, and his troops had better be prepared to do the same.
If you want to get all the country, you're going to get all, you need to kill us all.
So as she waits for the next assault, she wants the rest of the world to take notice. She may die in the days ahead, but if Putin succeeds in Ukraine, she'll be among millions who die for their countries.
They're not going to stop. You're next. Honestly, you are next. Today is Ukraine, tomorrow is Poland, because they're angry at many countries. They hate many countries, and they hate Ukraine, they hate Poland. Whatever they hate, they're gonna bomb. So if you're not reacting and protecting, so you're next.
A scary and serious warning from her. For more on this, we welcome in Dr. Gerry Gendlin. He joins us now. And Doctor, let's start with this. We just heard from a young woman in Kyiv who says the world needs to watch because if they don't pay attention, they're next. Is that the case, where Putin might not be done if the world doesn't respond properly?
Yeah, I don't know that Putin is done or not done. I mean, there's been talk about him threatening the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. But I do think that if a non-democracy is allowed to attack a democracy and get away with it without a response from the West and the democracies of the world, then democracy is not safe anywhere. And so the United States has to respond, the West has to respond doing something. Not necessarily militarily, but we have to do something in order to show that we will not be pushed around by non-democracies.
Certainly a unified front so far from the West in terms of sanctions on Russia. The question is, are those enough? And at what point do you lift those? Because sanctions, yes, they've crippled Russia's economy, but they also hurt the global economy.
Well, and this is something I think that President Biden is going to have to address in his State of the Union tonight. He's going to have to make the case for the West, and particularly the United States, since he's the American president, to put up with sanctions and the effect of the sanctions on the United States. We're likely to see some disruptions in the global supply chain. We're likely to see some shortages of certain things that Russia and Ukraine contribute to. Russia supplies a lot of palladium, which is used in cell phones, for example. Neon is produced in that area, which is also used in high tech. So, President Biden is going to have to make the case that these things are worth going through some trouble. And they are, I think. Standing up to Russia is worth it.
And final question for you. I want to touch on this. Reports today, again, just reports at this point, of so-called vacuum bombs used in Kharkiv, one of the other big cities in Ukraine. If that's the case, and if areas that are just civilian centers, not military targets, were shelled, those would be war crimes. The question is, how do you prove that, and what happens to people who ordered those?
I think you're right. If it's true that Russia has deliberately targeted civilians, that would be a violation of the laws of war. It would be a war crime, and whoever targeted and carried that out would find themselves probably charged in The Hague. But actually making progress and putting anybody in jail for that, particularly the Russian president, it's not very likely.
Lots on the line tonight in the State of the Union. We have time for just one more very quick response here. Your expectation for the State of the Union address tonight, and how important is this for President Biden?
It's very important both in terms of Ukraine and in Russia and our response to Russia. But I think you're not likely to see too much difference. The people who are going to be watching, the people who already like Biden, the people who don't like Biden are going to watch it, probably won't make a difference. He's got low approval ratings. It might boost them a little bit. It depends how well he does.
Dr. Gerry Gendlin of Edinboro University, an expert in foreign affairs and in politics, gracing us with his presence tonight. Professor, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's